So, I've been wanting to make this for a while, but I didn't know if I would be able to make it all the way through without breaking down. I figured today would be a good time to finally, talk about it because it's been 4 weeks since we heard the news that Chris Cornell took his own life. I'm a very cathartic person. I like to talk about things that are bothering me when I'm upset or any other kind of emotion that I'm dealing with. And, some people aren't like that, and it's fine. But I'm someone that needs to talk about it. And I don't know enough people who feel about it the same way that I do. So it's kind of lonely sometimes. Really, the only person I can do that with about this kind of topic who would fully understand me is my dad. And I think even he at this point he kind of thinks I'm losing my mind because I'm dwelling so much on it. So I wanted to make a video and kind of get my thoughts out there because I know that there's a lot of people that I've seen on the internet who feel the same way and are still having a really hard time accepting this. And the 5 stages of grief, DABDA, are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I'm not quite in the depression phase anymore. I don't really feel as sad as I had right after it happened. But I haven't quite accepted it yet still. So I think I'm kind of flip-flopping between the bargaining and depression phase. So I guess I'll kind of just go into my experiences as a Chris Cornell fan. I haven't been a fan my whole life. I'm not going to say I'm a lifelong fan, but that doesn't mean that he didn't mean as much to me as he meant to people who saw Soundgarden for the very first time that they ever played. He's the only person who can sing Robert Plant songs better than Robert Plant can. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was in the car with my dad, and the radio was on, and he turned it up, and he said, "Oh, this band's called Soundgarden, you gotta listen to this guy's voice, he can sing so high, and so, his range is just, outstanding. He has these 2 bands, Soundgarden and Audioslave," and I was like, what does that even mean? This is the weirdest band names I've ever heard, and I thank my dad for introducing me to him. I don't know, the only grunge band at that time I was really very familiar with was Pearl Jam. Soundgarden, actually, more so Audioslave, introduced me to grunge, basically, because I wasn't an avid Pearl Jam fan at the time. So I went home and I went on iTunes. I listened to a couple previews of some Soundgarden Audioslave songs, and I bought a couple. And, I was 15 at the time, so I didn't exactly connect with Soundgarden as much so quickly. I connected a lot faster with Audioslave. I bought some Audioslave CDs, I bought Telephantasm, and then somebody told me, "Oh, you gotta get Super Unknown. That's their best album." So I got Super Unknown, and I was fascinated by his voice, and I told everybody all the time, "Oh my god, you gotta listen to this guy. He's the best singer. He shits on your pop singers and everything else you guys are listening to." And him, and then I realized I was like, wow, he's very attractive too. So that's just the cherry on top. And even today, I was like, wow, he aged so well. Axl didn't at all. So fall of 2012, I was a junior. Soundgarden had gotten back together, I guess, the year before, and they put out King Animal, and they were going on tour, and they were coming to the Beacon Theater, I believe, in November, and I went on Ticketmaster, and within 2 minutes, the tickets were sold out, and I wasn't able to get them, and I remember sobbing. And they added a few more shows in January of 2013, so we ended up getting tickets to see them on the 22nd of January at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York. I remember I didn't know what to really expect because, I didn't, I had Super Unknown and Telephantasm, but they have so many other records, and they did so many songs that I didn't know, but I was just sitting there, and it was just, it was awesome. We were on the top part, the balcony seating, so I honestly, liked it better because I was able to sit and watch. If I was on the floor, I wouldn't have been able to see. And then I just remember at the end of the show, did this one song, and it was so high-pitched, and I was just like, what is going on? How is he 48 years old and can sing like that? So I looked up this song, and I discovered Beyond the Wheel, which isn't one of their hits or anything, and it's not a very, I guess, widely known song. I mean, all Soundgarden fans, I'm sure, know the song. Then, fall of 2013, he came around doing, I guess it was more of an extension of his songbook tour. So he came to the Beacon that November, and I saw him there. And I got some pretty good videos. And it was just awesome. Like, he just, like, you know, sits there with his guitars and talking to the crowd. Like, he's just, like, one of us who just trying to entertain us. And he did a combination of U2's one and Metallica's one. He used the melody for the U2 version and the words from the Metallica version because he had actually done it on accident and then liked how it sounded, so he kept performing it that way, and I thought that was a really interesting story. Summer of 2014, right after I graduated high school, I saw him with Soundgarden headlining with 9 Inch Nails. He put out Higher Truth, and I got the CD from my dad for Christmas in 2015 because it came out 2 months before. Last summer, he actually came to Englewood, New Jersey. Couldn't afford to go. People were selling tickets for like $200 on StubHub, which I thought was insane. Throughout high school, I was listening to Audioslave Pandora. That was like my go-to music selection, and there was so much good stuff coming on it. You know, when I was little, I didn't like Alice in Chains. I heard Rooster come on the Audioslave Pandora, and I was like, I like this. So then I got obsessed with Alice in Chains. I had a huge Alice in Chains fan. They were all phase. They were all I listened to, like the mid to end of my senior year, and then beyond that. So many people always talked about how Kurt Cobain was the best of that era. You know, perhaps if Kurt had lived longer and had lived as long as Chris did, we would have seen a lot more from him. And he even said in a couple interviews, like, he wished someday he'd be able to just play an acoustic guitar in small venues and be like Johnny Cash. Chris Cornell basically did that. At the beginning of Soaked in Bleach, someone said if there was a John Lennon figure for Generation X, it would be Kurt Cobain, and I say it would be Chris Cornell. He did so much, and everybody always says he was the singer of 2 bands. No, he wasn't. He was a singer of 3 bands. Everybody seems to forget about Temple of the Dog, which is one of the most underrated acts I know of. Other than avid Chris Cornell fans, not that many other people know Temple of the Dog or their songs, and I think like pretty much the entire album that they put out was awesome. So basically, thanks to Audioslave for introducing me to most of the music I listen to now, because also, like, Heaven Knows by the Pretty Reckless kept coming on the station in 2014 in the summer, because that's when the song was their current single. And this past fall, I was at school, and I heard of the Temple of the Dog reunion, and I was devastated that they weren't coming anywhere near Florida. In January, Audioslave had a reunion, and right around that time, I think it was the day that I saw the video posted of their performance, I said, holy shit, like, look at what this guy's doing. He was just touring his solo tour a few months ago, then jumped on Temple the Dog, then did Audioslave, and then Soundgarden was announcing a spring tour and another album later that year. Like, he was just all over the place doing everything. And I wrote an article because I wanted to finally put my thoughts into words about why he was the best of that time. So I wrote, why Chris Cornell is the king of grunge. You know, like, all the people that I met claimed, you know, Eddie Vedder was their favorite. Kurt Cobain was their favorite. I know some people who Alice in Chains was their favorite. A couple who Stone Temple Pilots was their favorite. So I didn't know anyone whose favorite grunge band was Soundgarden. So I felt, in a way, this sounds weird to say, I don't know how else to put it in words, but, like, he was mine. He was my singer. He was my grunge artist, because everybody else was claiming everyone else, and I was willing to defend him to the death why he was the best one. So I felt like, I was like, oh, like, you know, at least my artist is still alive, and I get to go see him perform, and not for long. So I got approved to cover Welcome to Rockville, and then Rock on the Range, too. When the Rock on the Range lineup came out at the end of November, I almost had a stroke. I couldn't believe how good the lineup was. Welcome to Rockville 2017 would be the last time I would see Chris Cornell alive and performing. I requested a couple interviews, you know, Alter Bridge, The Offspring, Soundgarden, Pretty Reckless, and Seether. I only got the Pretty Reckless and Seether. Obviously, I'm ecstatic about that. I have other videos where I'm talking about how that experience was. And I noticed the entire show that something was off about him then, even. And I don't know if other people noticed this or not, but since I had seen Soundgarden 2 other times before that, yeah, it was a few years ago, but his demeanor was different. There was one point where I talked about this in the other video, here's for the real Soundgarden fans, like, for the rest of you, music is free nowadays, your homework is to listen to this album, no more excuses, da-da-da. And I was just kind of like, he's never said things like that before. Like, he sounds angry. It's one thing if you're at a Soundgarden concert and you don't know the songs, then maybe you could be like, oh, like, you're not a real fan. But for someone at a festival and you're a headliner, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're that person's, all those people's favorite band. He wasn't smiling. And I even thought about it then. This isn't just me reflecting on it now that he's gone. So at the end of the show, he came to the front of the stage and he was like, we got one more for you. This is called Beyond the Wheel. And I was jumping and screaming like a little girl. I was so happy and excited to hear them do this. I finally got a new phone, but after the fact, and my videos are only Snapchats. Didn't get any interviews for Rock on the Range. So I remember the day before I was leaving, this was a Wednesday. I was leaving for Ohio on Thursday. The festival started Friday. That night, since I had requested an interview with them, they said that they couldn't do it, but I guess their publicist, since I had reached out multiple times, and I had also done a couple other things with them for other bands like Red Hot Chili Pepper, sent me an email saying that I was approved to photograph Soundgarden in the pit, and they were actually limiting who was allowed to. Metallica, Soundgarden, and The Offspring had their own special contracts about who was able to photograph them. So I'm not a photographer, and I didn't request a photo pass, but I was given one. And I was honored to have been chosen. I remember tweeting that night and telling my parents, I was like, wow, like, I just got picked to photograph Soundgarden. Like, I can be in the pit, like, 10 feet from Chris Cornell and take pictures of him. So I fell asleep that night, and at 4 a.m, my dog was coughing and woke me up, and I saw on my phone I had a notification that somebody posted in our Alternative Nation Reporters page where we just, like, talk about stuff. And I was so tired and out of it that I didn't open it, and I'm so glad that I didn't, because if I would have read that he wrote Chris Cornell died at 4 a.m, I wouldn't have gone back to sleep. I woke up at about 8:45, 9 o'clock, had a couple more things on my phone than usual on like the lock screen, and I opened it, and I saw that I had a bunch of texts, and the first one I opened was the preview for the message said, Lauren, what? And it was in all caps. It was from my friend who I went to Welcome to Rockville with. It was a screenshot, and it had Chris Cornell's face. It said, breaking, Soundgarden audio slave singer dead at 52. And I said no. And I went on Google and typed in his name. There was just a bunch of articles, and the headline was Chris Cornell dead, 52. And called out for my mom. I had fallen asleep in the living room. And she thought that I was saying mom in a desperate voice like that because something happened to my dog. So she turned and flipped and looked at him, and he was fine. And she looked back at me, and I blurted out the words, Chris Cornell died. And she just looked at me, and she went, what? I started bawling. And obviously, I've had many people die in my life. Several people I was really close to. But this was different. This was like, I'm leaving today supposed to see him tomorrow. I just saw him a few weeks ago and he was fine. And he's dead. And I called my dad. And it was his fucking birthday. And I was so overwhelmed and consumed by this news that I just blurted out that he died, but I was crying so hard he couldn't understand what I said at first, and so it took him a couple seconds to process it. And he said, get out of here. And I just couldn't say anything, and he said, how? And I said, I don't know, it's too soon. And he was like, he must have had a heart attack, and I was just sobbing on the phone. He said, I don't even know what to say to you. I'm so sorry. And then I called my friend who was going to Rock on the Range with me, and she said the same thing. And it meant a lot for someone to say sorry, because that meant that they were recognizing it as an actual loss to me, and not just like, oh, your favorite singer died. My friends, I think, don't get it because they're like, oh, it's just a rock star who died. But, you know, like, some people don't just listen to music, some people live through it. And it's like the soundtrack to their lives and their emotions and their mind, because it can put words to their thoughts that they can't put words on. And then some people didn't lose a musician. Some people lost a friend. Some people lost somebody who was their voice of reason, who was their motivation to get out of bed the next day, who was the only person who could understand them and like I said, put their thoughts into words and their emotions into words and their pain and suffering into words. And all at the same time remind them that it's okay to feel that way. I've never been in an extremely, extremely, extremely dark place to the point where I wanted to hurt myself or take my own life or hurt somebody else. And I'm thankful for that. But I have suffered mentally. Just because you've never wanted to hurt yourself, just because a lot of bad things aren't happening to you in your life doesn't mean that you're not feeling pain. I didn't exactly have the best high school experience. So having started listening to him while I was in this not very good place, it made me sort of imprint with the music a lot more, a lot stronger than I would with other songs. To have the person who was everybody else's voice of reason and telling you that pain's okay, to not be able to overcome their own pain and take their own life, it's a very weird feeling. When I got off the phone with my dad, I went online and there were more articles posted suspected suicide. And then my heart was broken even more. Like, how could this person who had a beautiful family, was an awesome father, loved the world, loved music, gave so much to his fans, how could he be suffering so much that he would want to end himself? I was absolutely gutted. I don't know how else to explain it. I felt empty, and I just sat there sobbing. The whole way there, I was crying. That night, I was up until wee hours of the night with chills up and down my spine. My body was actually having a physical reaction to his death. That's how much it affected me. And I didn't understand why in the beginning, but then that night when I was reading all of social media and how much other people were crushed by it too, then I didn't feel so alone. You know, my friend who was with me was very, very supportive and hugged me every time she saw I was upset. She wasn't questioning it, but it's not the same when you don't have somebody that you can share your emotions with because they're not feeling it too. The next morning I woke up and I wrote an open letter to him and posted it on Alternative Nation, and I wrote it very quickly. I didn't even really stop to think about what I was saying. It was kind of just like a journal that I was typing into, and I posted it. Well, I sent it in to him, to my editor, and then I went to Rock on the Range, and it was being evacuated because of the storm, so we went back, and by the time I got back, I saw it had been posted, and all these people were saying such nice things, and I was crying all over again. People were just saying, like, oh, you know, it's nice to see that he even affected somebody that wasn't from his generation, that didn't grow up to see him, like, grow into an artist. Like, you know, it's nice. You're a young, talented writer, and we're so glad that your dad got you into his music. Anyone who's a fan of his will shed a tear reading this, and that it was so honest and beautiful, and everybody was thanking me and reaching out to me on all forms of social media, and I was overwhelmed by how, like, supportive everybody is, because usually when you write things, there's going to be a handful of people who don't agree with what you're saying, and those are usually the people who make comments. The rest of them just kind of read it and they agree, and that's it. They leave. They like it, whatever. So that night, I was really just looking forward to the tribute. You know, Bush, Gavin Rossdale incorporated Black Hole Sun into their set. Live came out with an acoustic guitar, and he said, "This is one of the most beautiful songs we've been given." And I thought it was going to be Lightning Crashes, because it's about, you know, dying at birth or whatever. And then they started playing I Am the Highway. That is probably the song of his that resonated with me the most. I interpret it as, like, I'm bigger than what everyone makes me out to be, what your enemies make you out to be, and what you yourself make you out to be. When you're feeling down, you have to remind yourself that you're not this small thing. You're the big thing. You're as big as you can be, and as beautiful as can be. So I was trying to hold in the tears for the tribute, but I couldn't. The tribute started, and they put his face up on the screen with animated candles over it, and they were playing Hallelujah. And then they isolated his vocals for Black Hole Sun and played video clips of him throughout the years, and it sounded like he was standing there with a microphone singing it. And then they played him a video of him singing Imagine with, like, a picture of him performing in the background. It was just an acoustic video, him sitting by himself recording it. And then Corey Taylor from Stone Sour and Slipknot came out, and they did Wish You Were Here. And I looked to my friend, I said, of all songs, I was already, like, convulsioning from crying so hard. Here, and they did Hunger Strike, and it was like everybody singing I'm Going Hungry back to him in Chris's, like, when it's his part. It was just, like, crazy, because it's like everyone here knows that song, everyone here loves him, everyone here is upset and feeling pain, and it almost did feel like a funeral in a way. It was probably one of the saddest things I've ever been to. it was like the first tribute that they were having too. So that's what also made it so special. It was literally the day after they announced that he was dead. Then they played a couple more songs by him. Say Hello to Heaven, Two Drink Minimum, and then Thank You by Led Zeppelin. And it didn't feel real until they put his picture up on the screen and it said Chris Cornell 1964 to 2017. And that's when it was like, holy fucking shit, he's actually dead. And all these media reports coming out saying different things, and Vicky taking her statements back since then, and none of it is making sense. I was up till 4 in the morning. You know, Seattle blacked out their Space Needle the night before for an hour, and it's just like, that goes to show how much of an impact he had. And I still felt sick to my stomach and nauseous and everything else. Over the weekend, I asked some people, like, if they had any final words for Chris Cornell. And, like, I know it's too soon to ask this, but they would say that they love Soundgarden. I was like, what do you think they should do? Because in my personal opinion, I don't think they should carry on. I'm sorry. Yes, it's not fair to the rest of the band that they have to end their musical career. They can start another band and do something else. I don't see why they would want to. Chris Cornell can't ever be replaced. You know, I was devastated over the death of Scott Weiland, but he had his own band. Stone Temple Pilots had already had Chester Bennington filling in for him at some other time. Chris Cornell is a voice that's irreplaceable. Nobody can recreate it. You could hear a song you've never heard by him without knowing it's him, and you would know it's him, because that's how distinguishable his voice is. He's given us so much music between Temple the Dog, Soundgarden, Audioslave, and then his 4 solo albums. You know, like, it's absolutely insane. And I saw Taylor Momsen again. The Pretty Reckless was doing a signing, and I decided to go just because I wanted to tell her how sorry I was. And the bassist, Mark Damon, looked at me and said, "Look who's back." And then she looked up at me, and then she's like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" She had no life in her voice. Last time I saw her, she was so, like, giggity and happy. And they were some of the last people to have seen him alive. The Detroit show was their last headlining show with them. They did Like a Stone that day during their set on the Sunday, and she was crying on stage. For some reason, there's just something about this that's so much harder to get over. You know, a lot of the deaths in my family, or anyone close to me, weren't unexpected at all. And this was unexpected. And no, I didn't know him personally, but I felt like I did. And I had hoped that someday I'd be able to further my career enough so that I would be able to interview him. And now I'll never have that chance. This to me is a horrific loss, because a lot of the musicians I listen to already are dead and are old and dying. To think that there's going to be no more. I was looking forward to getting to see him perform for a long time. Every night before I fall asleep, I'm Googling things and trying to see if there's any more updates on the details of his death. And it's my way of being cathartic. My friends think it's sick. All I've been listening to lately is Soundgarden, and him is my way of grieving, and it helps. I feel like a part of my heart and soul was ripped out May 18th this year and went to heaven. When I was driving to Rock on the Range, I Am the Highway came on, and the sun was setting, and we were on a winding, desolate road in Pennsylvania on the way to Ohio, and I just thought for a second, and I was like, I need to get this tattooed. I Am the Highway tattooed my wrist. It looks like it's crooked. It's actually not. It's very straight on my wrist, but when I turn it this way, it looks crooked, but I love it, and it hurt so bad. It only took about like 3 to 4 minutes, but I was just sitting there like squeezing with my hand, and I left such deep nail marks in my palm, and I started tasting copper in my mouth, like when you run for too long. It was like pennies. Oh my god, it's disgusting. It was bad. It was pinching, and then it was burning as he would go and do the rest of the letter, and I'm gonna have to get some kind of numbing spray for the rest of the ones that I get. But like I said, that song helped me through so much, and I wanted to get a tribute for him because of how much of an impact he had on me, and just showing how long it's taken me to get over him passing away. It means that I made the right decision. He died, but his music never will. Music lives forever, and it saves. So I don't think you could possibly regret getting a music tattoo. Chris Cornell was a big part of my love for music. He was probably my favorite artist of all time as an individual. I don't understand how he killed himself, how he could do that, like, if that's even true. All these media reports are conflicting, and it's driving me insane. There's so much to the story that's just so screwed up. I wanted to take the time and talk about it more, and if anybody is feeling the same way, comment below. I'd love to have a discussion about it. I'm going to link some of the articles below that I'd written about him, why he's the best, and my open letter to him, and I hope you found the peace that you've been looking for. And thank you, Chris Cornell.